Hello everyone. Welcome back to the AWS Solution Architect Associate Bootcamp. In this session, we are diving into AWS Directory Services, a critical component for managing secure, scalable identity in the cloud. Whether you are integrating on-premises Active Directory, enabling single sign-on, or supporting Windows-based application, AWS gives you the tool to do it right. The AWS Solution Architect Associate exam expects you to know when to federate a directory service with IAM role, and AWS Directory Services is also listed as a must-known services for the certification. That makes this topic critical not just for passing the certification but for building real-world enterprise-grade solutions on AWS. In this session, we are going to cover what is Active Directory and why should we use. We'll also discuss different directory services available in AWS. We'll review their key features and use cases. Then we'll talk about different trust relationship and hybrid identity. On behalf of the CloudExpert solution team, I would like to thank you for joining us and exploring this video. If you have already subscribed to our channel, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. It truly means a lot to our team. If you haven't subscribed yet, we kindly invite you to do so and gain access to premium cloud courses and certification bootcamps, all for free. Let's get started. Let's begin with the basis. What is Active Directory or AD? AD is Microsoft's directory service used for managing users, computers, groups, and permissions across enterprise network. It's a centralized hierarchical database used by Microsoft systems. It authenticates and authorizes all users and computers in a Windows domain network. It also supports authentication protocols like LDAP, Kerberos, and DNS. And Active Directory or AD is the backbone of enterprise identity systems. It provides login credentials, group policies, and access controls. It enables single sign-on, group policy enforcement, and secure access control. If you do not know what is single sign-on, let's assume that you have multiple applications and all the applications belongs to the same domain. Then you can use one user ID and password to log into all the applications. And when you have single sign-on enabled, you do not have to log in separately and you will be able to seamlessly navigate between the applications without entering your user credentials. In Active Directory, objects are organized in trees and a group of trees is called directory forest. Now let me break down why we need Active Directory with a simple example. Let's assume you have 3 laptops at your home and you have login credentials for all the 3 laptops. Without Active Directory, you need to manage and maintain login credentials separately. If you need to add a login profile to a laptop, then you need to log into that laptop using admin credential and create or delete as required. You might not see the pain for your home laptops, but consider for organizations where employee joins and leave the organizations daily and they repurpose the laptops or resources. Will they log into every devices to create or delete the accounts? They might have thousands of laptops or desktops. The answer is no. That is why Active Directory comes in. Every organization will have their own domain controller. You might have heard about your office's corporate domain. Your organization may span across the globe and they may have domain based on the geography. Like for Indian assets or users, they could have India domain. For Asia Pacific, they could have APAC domain and etc. for all other domains. Now when these devices or assets are connected to the domain controller, the admin user can centrally manage these resources including users, groups and permission. Let's assume Bob is a registered user for this Active Directory. With his Active Directory credentials or network credentials, now Bob can log in from any devices as he wants. Let's understand how Active Directory authentication works. Let's assume I have some user devices or user application and services, and both are registered with the Active Directory. Now when user logs in, that means when they enter their user credentials in the system, then when they will click that login button, then the user device will send the authentication request to Active Directory, and Active Directory will authenticate or validate the user credentials. If the user has provided valid credentials, then the Active Directory will authenticate the user and it will provide an authentication token. Then the user can use that authentication service and it can exchange the token with the service that he or she is going to access. So in that entire flow, first Active Directory will authenticate the user with the entered login credential, and if the authentication is successful, it will provide authentication token, and that authentication token will be used to establish a continuous session between the user and the requested services. As you understand the Active Directory authentication process, now you must be asking, why do we need directory services in AWS? As organizations move applications to the cloud, users and applications still need to authenticate securely and consistently. These directory services can be used for managing access to EC2 Windows instance, or maybe integrating with Amazon RDS for SQL Server Engine, or enabling Amazon Workspace or QuickSight with enterprise login credentials. Enterprise often extend on-premise Active Directory to cloud to retain their same enterprise credentials and support hybrid environment. If you have a requirement for that, then the AWS Active Directory Services will be your savior. It also helps you to enable SSO or single sign-on between multiple applications. And also if you have a requirement for some cloud native applications with LDAP or Kerberos integration, then Active Directory is the go. Whether you are fully in the cloud or running hybrid workloads, AWS Directory Services gives you the flexibility and security needed to handle user authentication and resource permissions. Now let's review the directory service offerings from AWS. And let's start with the most powerful option, which is AWS Managed Microsoft AD. AWS Managed Microsoft AD is a fully managed Microsoft Active Directory hosted across multiple availability zones for high availability. It supports group policies, LDAP, and Kerberos authentication. It also supports trust relationship with on-premises, and you can have one-way trust or both-way trust relationship established. It also provides seamless domain join for your EC2 Windows systems, and also user authentication for AWS services like RDS SQL Server databases or workspaces, or even for QuickSights. The beauty of AWS Managed Active Directory, AWS handles the patching, replication, high availability and monitoring. You as a customer only manage your users, groups and policies just like your on-premise Active Directory. That is why this is the go-to choice for enterprise-grade AD functionality in AWS. Next up is AD Connector. AD Connector is a lightweight proxy that allows AD services to authenticate against your on-premise Active Directory. Since AD Connector is using on-premise Active Directory, it does not store directory data inside AWS. Instead, it securely proxy authentication request back to your on-premise directory via VPN or a direct connect. AD Connector is ideal when you already have a functional Active Directory, or maybe you want to avoid directory duplication, and also you need AWS services like workspaces to authenticate using your enterprise credentials. And please remember, for AD Connector to work, you need network connectivity between your on-premises data center and AWS. You need either a VPN or direct connect connection. We have dedicated lecture for VPN and direct connect in this bootcamp series. The last option is Simple AD, which is a cost-effective Samba-based directory for small-scale environments. It supports functionality like user, group management, computer or EC2 domain join. It also provides basic group policies and Kerberos-based authentication. Simple AD is available in two sizes. Please remember, the small directories can have up to 2000 objects, which includes 500 users, groups, and computers, whereas the large directory offering can have up to 20,000 objects, including 500 users, groups, and computer. However, Simple AD does not support trust relationship or advanced features like organizational unit. It also does not support custom schema extensions, and you can use Simple AD for development or testing workload, or for small business startup where full AD features are not required but cost is your biggest concern. If you got confused between all the three offerings, here is a quick summary to help you decide which directory options to use, and we'll discuss with different features like if you need full Microsoft AD support, then managed Microsoft AD is the option because AD connector and Simple AD that does not support full Microsoft AD features. If you need LDAP or Kerberos authentication, then all the three offerings has this capability. If you are looking for trust relationship, then AWS Managed Microsoft AD is the option because AD connector does not maintain directory objects inside AWS and Simple AD does not support trust relationship. If you want to integrate with on-premise Active Directory, either you can use Managed Microsoft AD with two-way trust or one-way trust, and you can use AD connector. If you are looking for Active Directory which is suitable for EC2 or RDS, then you can use all the three options because Simple AD basic version also provides Windows-based authentication. Now to summarize, you can use Managed AD for full control and trust relationship. You can use AD connector if you already have on-premise Active Directory and want minimal setup. And on the other hand, you can use Simple AD when cost is more important than features. Now let's review on-premise AD integration and trust. Let's assume we have an on-premise data center where we have our on-premise Active Directory and user groups. And on the same time, we have AWS Cloud where we have all the AWS services. For this hybrid environment, AWS lets you integrate your on-premise AD with AWS Managed Microsoft AD using a site-to-site VPN or a direct connect connection, and you can establish trust relationships between your on-premise AD domain and AWS Managed AD. Now, if you are confused with what is trust, a trust is a secure connection between two AD domains that allow users in one to access resources in the other. And you can set up either one-way trust, where AWS trusts your on-premise AD and your enterprise users can access AWS using enterprise credentials. You can also configure two-way trust, that is fully hybrid access between AWS and on-premises. That means all the users created in AWS will be able to access on-premises resources and the vice versa. And there is a third way, it's called the forest trust, where you have multiple organizations. Maybe your organization has multiple sister organizations. Then you can create forest trust where separate organizations can share resources between them. For example, if domain A trusts domain B, for our case, AWS Managed AD is domain A and your on-premise Active Directory is domain B, then your users and groups from on-premises using their enterprise credentials, they will be able to access the resources from domain A or from AWS's. Please remember this diagram. If you have two domains and if you have a trust direction from domain A to domain B, then domain B users will be able to access the resources from domain A, not vice versa. But if you have a two-way trust relationship, then all the users from domain A will be able to access the resources from domain B and vice versa. And this setup enables single sign-on, central policy enforcement, and seamless access across hybrid cloud and on-premises environments. This certification does not expect your expertise to create an AD domain or integrate with on-premises network. However, knowing different options will help you to remember the concept. Let's log into AWS Management Console and let's review the options. I have logged into AWS Management Console. From Service Search option, let's type Directory Services And here you go. I do not have any directory services in my AWS account. That's why we can create from setup directory. Here you have different options that we talk: AWS managed Microsoft AD, simple AD, and AD connector. Let's select AWS managed Microsoft AD first and then click setup directory. Although we have selected directory types as AWS managed Microsoft AD, however, I have option to change from here, and here is a small description about the selected offering. I can choose simple AD or AD connector, and based on the selections, the steps will also vary. Now let's go with AWS managed Microsoft AD and let's click next. For AWS managed Microsoft AD, we have two different editions. One is standard edition and then the second is enterprise editions. Based on your requirement, here you have 1 GB of storage and this is optimized up to 30,000 objects. However, if you need a bigger storage up to 17 GB and if you are looking for up to 500 objects, then you should go for enterprise edition. Now for this demo, let's select standard edition. In terms of directory domain name, if you have a directory domain, you can enter that. I do not have a directory domain. That is why I am going to use cloudexpertsolutions.com. Now directory net bias name, let's use the corp, and directory description, this is optional. Let's provide some admin password. I have entered the same password under confirm password. Please remember you have to select a password between 8 to 64 characters. Now let's click next. The directory service will be created inside your VPC. That is why you have to select a VPC here. We haven't covered VPC or subnet yet, but we have dedicated lesson to cover what is VPC, what is subnet, and all the features. Now let's go with the default VPC and let's select some subnets from the available options and then click next. This is the final screen where you can review all the selected options, and if you click this create directory button, then the directory will be created for you. This version has 30 days of limited trial, but after 30-day free trial, it is going to charge $86 per month or 12 cents per hour. I do not have an use case and I do not want to spend money. That is why I am going to cancel this, and let's review the simple AD option. Let's click leave. Now this time we will review the simple AD. So let's click setup directory, and from the directory types, let's select simple AD. Now click next. For simple AD, we have two different options. For small option, you can create up to 2000 objects that include 500 users, groups, and computers. If you have a bigger requirement, you can go with the large option where you can create up to 20,000 objects including 5,000 users, groups, and computers. Let's select small for this demo. Again, the directory DNS name, I am going to use cloudexpertsolutions.com. You please select whatever you have, or if you already have some domain. Then for the domain net bias, let's use corp. Again, the default administrator password, let's provide some password, and the password should be between 8 to 64 characters. The directory description is optional. I am not going to provide any description. I am going to click next. Again, like the previous option for AWS managed Microsoft AD, this will also be placed inside your VPC. That is why you have to select a VPC and the subnet, and this subnet is for high availability, and you should select two different subnets. I will go with the default VPC, and for subnet, let's select two subnets and then next. This is the last step or last screen where you can review all the selected options in terms of your selected VPC, subnets, your directory domain name, directory net bias, and all other details. Simple AD also comes with a 30-day free trial, and after that it is going to charge $36. This is less compared to the AWS managed Microsoft AD where the charge was $84. And the last step is create directory. As I mentioned, I do not have an use case. I am going to cancel this option because I wanted you to show all the available options or how to create a directory if you have an actual use case. Accidentally, if you click that create directory button, please make sure you delete all the directories, or else you are going to get charged after 30 days free trial. That wraps up this module. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more AWS exam preparation courses and cloud certification bootcamps. Got questions or feedback? Drop them in the comment. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for learning with us at CloudExpert Solutions. You are now one step closer to crushing your exam. See you in the next module.